Move your career further, faster in just 2 days with a Harvard Professional and Executive Development Program. Advance your leadership skills, craft smarter business strategies, build your network, and transform how you work and think to keep your career moving forward. You'll earn a certificate and can add Harvard to your resume with Harvard Professional and Executive Development. Learn more at professional.dce.harvard.edu/Spotify.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/campaign to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. At Mint Mobile, we like to do the opposite of what Big Wireless does. They charge you a lot. We charge you a little. So naturally, when they announced they'd be raising their prices due to inflation, we decided to deflate our prices due to not hating you. That's right. We're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
The Inner Circle descend upon the Court of Nightmares, intent to win the allegiance of the Darkbringer Legion at Kyr's command. But when negotiations do not go their way, Rhys plays a hand that may tear apart the Inner Circle from within. Tensions run high when Rhys admits to his schemes, and more than one person must reveal the secrets they've been hiding to keep the group afloat when despair threatens to sink them.
The views expressed by the hosts are entirely their own and in no way represent the thoughts or intentions of the original author. This podcast is a discussion shared to spark thought and conversation on characters and themes of this novel.
Though the hosts speak mostly within the constraints of this book, series spoilers may be discussed with or without warning. Explicit language, as well as themes of sex, violence, abuse, death, and depression, will recur throughout the podcast. Listener discretion is advised. Thank you to all our Patreon supporters, with a special shout out to our March 2023 Trophy Wives. Thank you Nicole, Kathy, Kathleen, Amelade, Jessica, Helen, Danica, Carissa, Megan, Sierra, Colleen, Haley, Alexa, Sam, and Allison. To learn more about how to become a Trophy Wife, visit patreon.com/booktalk for Book Talk.
Welcome to Book Talk for Book Talk, a podcast where we deep dive into the writing of your favorite novels.
This season, we're exploring Sarah J. Maas's most ambitious novel in the Court of Thorns and Roses series.
This is Jack.
And I'm Amy.
This week we're discussing chapters 25 through 27 in A Court of Wings and Ruin. This week we ask ourselves, how have the Inner Circle's dynamics been permanently altered?
Themes we see in this section include women as currency, as well as a lot of lying.
A lot of lying.
You've listened to us long enough to know by now that there's power and meaning in clothing. Feyre learned in Mist and Fury that clothing can be a weapon. At the start of chapter 25, we are reminded that the other women in the Inner Circle know this too.
Mor is dressed in cobwebs and stardust like Feyre. Keep in mind that she's Rhys's relative, so that connection makes sense. Cobwebs was such a specific term for me. I know it's meant to show that they didn't wear much and that it's supposed to be like a creepy image, but what it makes me think of is from last season when we saw 2 instances of spider imagery with the human queens. It would make sense that they would need to channel the same evil energy here because they are trying to put up a front, but it's just a fun comparison when you think about how the human queens went to meet up with them with the intent to betray the team, and the same thing's going on here. The Inner Circle is here to mess with Kyr, or at least Rhys is.
Let's examine the women in the room. As Jack said, Mor is dressed in cobwebs like Feyre. Amren is not said to be in her usual style, but we can assume, based on the way the text is written, that she's in those loose pants and cropped blouse. It's almost irreverent, and I love that of her. Nesta is dressed by Amren. Jack talked a lot last season and earlier this season about Rhys dressing women, giving them power, but also getting credit. Well, now we get to see that play out, but with Amren at the helm. Under Amren's direction, Nesta is dressed, quote, simple, brutal. A dress of impenetrable black flowed to the dark marble floors, tight through the bodice and sleeves, its neckline skimming the base of her pale throat. This dress is both modest and revealing. Why? I think to focus the onlooker on Nesta's face and eyes, which look out with, quote, savage clarity, like you're about to be judged and found wanting, like my cat. Remember, Nesta is a lady.
This is one of my favorite moments because I feel like there's a complexity of feelings. Feyre doesn't use her normal harsh description of Nesta. She doesn't describe her as basically a cold bitch, but rather she has a savage clarity. Nesta lifts her chin and doesn't balk at the Court of Nightmares. What I believe we're seeing is Feyre respecting Nesta for the first time in this book. I think Feyre is impressed with how Nesta is behaving suddenly in this setting. Nesta's cool and calm bitchiness is now a strength. I think there's two reasons to this. One, a man did not dress Nesta. Sure, Amren did, but the outfit is very true to who Nesta is. Modest, concealing. Second, Nesta's power doesn't lay in her sex appeal. Feyre has to be mostly naked when she shows up and act like a sex god and be overly sexual. This is the mask that she puts on with Rhys. Nesta's power does not come from her sexuality.
That's such an interesting point, and it makes me wonder, does that mean Feyre's power comes from her sexuality?
I'm going to say yes, because even though she's not the character that we would assume, sexual power and everything, but I mean, go back to the very beginning when she found power with Isaac Hale.
Yeah.
The first time her and Tamlin have sex, she tries to get on top at first.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Feyre's always found power in her sexuality, but in this moment, I feel like it might be a moment of like, oh, I didn't need to do that necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
Not that she regrets it or anything, but she never had a choice in how she was going to dress there.
It's true. It's true. Rhys forced her.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was a requirement of her coming to the Court of Nightmares for the first time. You must be the part of my whore.
Yeah, but that also didn't need to be the way that it played out.
It didn't.
It works out. I think Feyre was into it. Like I was into it.
We were all into it.
But when you really think about it, Feyre did not need to dress up that way. And I think this is one of those moments where she's looking at Nesta and it's like, oh.
There were other choices.
There were other choices. And I think she kind of respects that. It's like your power is your own. It does not come from your own sex appeal. And it doesn't come from a man giving you that.
Which I don't think Feyre resents it, but I think it's almost hard for her to compute.
Yeah, I don't think she resents it. And I don't think that she has to resent it necessarily.
No.
She doesn't want to resent it. But if I was Feyre, I feel like there would definitely be a moment of like, wait a minute, you mean I didn't have to dress up like this?
Right.
And she has fun with it, but she doesn't get to come in that fully covered outfit. Like she can't go to the Court of Nightmares now and
be modest.
Like she can't wear whatever she wants to wear.
Right.
Amren gets to wear whatever she wants to wear. Moore basically is always described as dressing really sexy and revealing anyway.
Because she wants to.
Feyre is the only one who has to really change her look and style in order to go down there.
You're right. She does. But that doesn't necessarily mean that she dislikes it.
No, I agree. Like, I'm
saying it for the sake of our listeners.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, like, we're not saying that it's a bad thing. We're just pointing it out.
Yes. As the inner circle enter the Court of Nightmares, Rhys makes a power statement by placing Feyre on the solitary throne and then perching on the arm like a pet. Feyre, scantily clad, as we pointed out, cannot be more than a consort or a plaything, at least in the eyes of the Court of Nightmares. So to put her on the throne and then make the whole court bow says something big.
We should have known in the first read that Rhys was up to something, because Rhys is always up to something. But here we know that he planned for there to be only one throne, and that the fact that he didn't tell Feyre. Give her a heads up. It's a big warning for me of what's to come, that there's a lot more that he didn't tell Feyre, because he could have easily told Feyre this one.
Absolutely.
You didn't have to be like, surprise, we're putting you on the spot.
And I think we get more into that, right? About why he's not telling her things.
Yep, absolutely. We have an answer for you guys.
Just hold on tight. What I find fascinating at this moment is that Feyre avoids looking at Nesta, quote, while she had no choice but to follow suit. And that's with regard to the bowing in front of Feyre. But why does Feyre avoid Nesta's gaze? Is it self-consciousness? Or maybe shame at the role that Feyre's playing and the joy that she has in playing that role? is it too much of Feyre's true self suddenly revealed to her sister?
So much to unpack with this whole sister dynamic in this setting. Feyre has always had more power than a younger sister normally would. And what I mean by that is Feyre played the patriarchal role in their human life. And I'm not going to say that Nesta necessarily viewed Feyre as the patriarch of their family, but I think it's safe to say that Nesta doesn't view Feyre like a little sister. I'm sure you don't, Amy, view your little sisters the same way that Nesta views Feyre.
Right.
They're your little sisters.
Or my daughters in some way.
Yeah. So here we are in this Fey world, and Feyre is the High Lady. She's in power, and it becomes a lot more clear here. I think that's where some of their struggle and their dynamic comes from, that all of these people respect Feyre and will listen to her. But Feyre and Nesta are still sisters. Feyre is not Nesta's High Lady. Let's take that up a notch, and that's where we're at here at the Court of Nightmares. Nesta bows to Feyre. There's no doubt for me that she bowed, because if she didn't bow, there guarantee would have been some snickering and laughter in the audience. Feyre has been struggling with the idea of being High Lady, of making these tough calls, and being above everyone else. So if she were to turn and see Nesta bow, that would almost make it way more real for her. Feyre would indeed be High Lady.
Before I move on to my thought, one thing I thought of just now while you were speaking is that, so Nesta bows, and she's willing to play that part. I think that says a lot, that even though Nesta and Feyre do not agree on a lot of things, Nesta is capable of respecting her sister enough to view her as a High Lady.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that things will later devolve to a point where, you know, she doesn't feel that way. But here in this moment, despite their disagreements, Nesta's capable of that.
Yeah. Feyre, before, again, while they were all still human, Feyre was the one who would tell Nesta, you can't marry Thomas Mandray. I want to call him like Manray, like a
Manray. Yeah.
But she told Nesta, you're not allowed to do this. You have to go chop wood. Here's money. That was something that Nesta had to accept / was willing to accept because she was being taken care of, you know?
As she is now.
And that's the thing where it's like a hard pill to swallow, but I think it's easier because, as we're about to get into, Feyre shows how powerful she is here.
She sure does. Before we move on to the power play that Feyre makes, I'm going to jump a little bit ahead. So Feyre attacks those in the court who try to use their powers on her, which is a moment I love and we're going to come back and talk to. At that moment, Feyre notes that, quote, my sister was staring as if she'd never seen me before. I didn't dare break my mask of bemused coolness. This is so interesting to me when we just were examining Nesta bowing. What are your thoughts, Jack?
Because I don't trust Feyre's interpretation of Nesta at all, I'm going to choose to think that whatever Feyre thinks she sees isn't actually what she's seeing. Did Feyre think that Nesta is thinking poorly of her here? That Feyre did something wrong or is evil? Nesta is too smart for this. She knows that the Court of Nightmares is a messed up, scary place. Nesta had a freaking train to protect her mind. I think in this moment, Nesta is working her ass off to keep her mental shields up, and Feyre is over here just kicking people's asses left and right. Personally, I believe that Nesta is impressed and in awe of her sister.
I think you bring up a great point. I think Feyre is misinterpreting her sister's expressions because she always assumes her sister is expressing distaste or disdain or dislike of Feyre. She probably doesn't recognize what it means for Nesta to be impressed with her.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Nesta has only 3 facial expressions.
100.
And those express a lot.
And she has major resting bitch face. So they're all angry looking.
I know, right? She's over here being wow, good job. I need to keep my face cool, calm, and collected in Feyre's mind. God, she hates me. She thinks I'm evil. All this stuff. Boo-hoo.
Yeah, Feyre, get off your high horse.
Yeah.
I also want to acknowledge that there's a blip of a moment where Feyre remembers that she and Rhys, quote, had not told Amren of the bone carver of the prison visit. Something a bit like guilt coiled in my stomach, though I supposed I had to get used to it. All right, but do you, Feyre? Do you have to get used to it? Or is that just how you and Rhys choose to be leaders?
Don't have to get used to it. Could have told her.
Yeah.
The second they came back from the bone carver. They're just avoiding it.
They're avoiders.
Yeah.
But let's get back to the whole Feyre attacking people in the Court of Nightmares. So we know that there are a few individuals in the Court of Nightmares who attempt to use their powers to approach Feyre and test her. She uses her powers to pounce on them, quote, like a cat with a bird under its paw, several of them. You have to admit at this point that Feyre loves this game. She toys with those who dare touch her with their power, noting their faces when they're finally let go and reveal who they are. I think Feyre is doing what she claims Amryn does when Amryn departs from the room. Quote, let some of the monster inside show. Just like she showed a bit of the wolf when she smiled at Ianthe earlier in the book. Same sort of language pattern. Because when you really think about it, that's who we're seeing right now. We are seeing the monster inside Feyre that she tries to keep hidden. This is the High Lady of the Court of Nightmares, the same one who took revenge on the Spring Court. Here is where Feyre, quote, does not thank anyone. Here I took what was mine and offered no gratitude or apologies for it. And I think she loves it.
Well, let's see. I want to look at that quote again. Quote, here I took what was mine and offered no gratitude or apologies. I'm sorry, are we in chapter 25 or are we back in the Spring Court? Talk about some Spring Court destruction mentality here. We could have put this line at the start of the book and it would have fit perfectly. Our girl isn't learning or changing much just yet.
No, because we're looking at the monster.
I mean, I think in that particular line, they had served her wine. It was like a guy who had just served her wine.
Right.
It's not his fault.
No.
Okay?
Leave him out of it.
Yeah, like, he could be a dreamer. He could be trying to get out.
Right. He could be trapped.
He's like, you think he wants to serve you that day? He's just trying to make some part-time money, man.
That's right.
Like, you couldn't even nod your head to him?
It's rude.
Rude. Tip your servers.
In America.
In America. And outside if you really want to. I feel bad. You're not supposed to. I know.
I mean, yeah. They look at you weird, right? I mean, I feel like they did when we were in Europe.
Well, we didn't try because we knew better.
Yeah.
Well, now I feel like a jerk.
Yeah, I don't ever remember tipping when I lived in China.
When I lived in London, I never tipped because, like, you're not supposed to. And it was...
so painful.
It was painful at first. And then coming back to America, I was like, oh, no.
I have to tip.
But again, tip your servers way more than you're supposed to.
I want to bring up a small detail that I think is important to our discussion of the overall theme of this book. There's a throwaway detail of night-blooming flowers present in the chandelier. We saw this same detail in Mist and Fury in the stone carvings when Feyre first visited the Court of Nightmares. These are the same flowers, the night-blooming flowers, that Feyre had on a dress she wore to the summer court in Mist and Fury and that we saw on the silverware in Chapter 16 of Wings and Ruin. This flower is present in both the Court of Nightmares and the Court of Dreams. Why is that? I think it's because ultimately, they're part of the same court, the Night Court. Just like Feyre can be High Lady of both courts, she has both light and dark sides, a good face and a monster within. To me, these flowers represent that what maybe is shrouded in darkness is never really gone. Moving on from flowers and focusing on what's actually happening in the scene, during the negotiation with Keir to obtain the Darkbringer Legion for the war, Rhys mentions, quote, all of this belongs to me. Why do I bring this up? Well, not a page later, Keir says, quote, you hoard yourself to Amarantha, but what about your mate? Rhys, in response, uses, quote, invisible claws that gouged deep marks in the table. This is so Tamlin to me that I had to point it out. It's a nice little reminder that the two are not unsimilar.
I know people may not always like the comparisons that we make, but...
it's there. And note that it's called claws, not talons.
Yeah.
Because talons are Rhys, claws are Tamlin.
Mm-hmm.
For Rhys to have claws brings that comparison to me.
Absolutely. Keir knows exactly what he wants from this negotiation, but he draws out the start of it by pretending to ask for Feyre as part of the bargain. I don't think it's because he's madly attracted to her, and he knows for damn sure that Rhys would never agree to that. Keir is trying to get a rise out of people here to show that women are for sex and currency only. I wonder if this was also done to show that everyone here is capable of showing restraint, even though Rhys just clawed up the table, but he's not hitting him. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think that's...
breaking things isn't abuse.
Yeah, like last time he broke his arm.
Yeah, that's true.
And all he did was like claw up the table. Boo-hoo.
That's true.
I think that SJM is kind of setting us up here to make Moore's reaction a little bit more painful to watch.
I agree with you. The fact that Moore is able to put on a show in front of her father regularly, and for her to continue to keep her cool even when her high lady is alluded to as being a whore, for her to break that facade is huge.
Yeah.
And I do admit that I took that for granted when I read the book. So I think you make a great point.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
And then to sweeten the chaotic scene, Eris makes his appearance. I do want to pause because I wonder if Rhys never would have brought Eris in if Keir had been more willing to help. My money's on yes. Why is that? Because at the start of chapter 26, when Feyre asks Rhys what Eris is doing here, Rhys responds, making sure Keir agrees to help. It's too bad that Moore's obviously betrayed and hurt from this act with no prep time mentally.
I'm going to spoil a point that I'm going to make a little bit later, but I think it's important to point it out now so that as we analyze this chapter, we can see how it frames up. Eventually, in the next chapter, it's said that Moore would have fought the idea of Keir coming to Velaris if she was told ahead of time, and that's why they didn't tell her. Well, no, they didn't tell her because Rhys didn't sell Velaris to Keir. He knew exactly what he was selling, and that was Moore's pain. And by bringing in Eris, he was sweetening the deal of hurting Moore to Keir. I'll even go on to say that Feyre was likely pretty open with her distress, right? Like she sees that Moore's in pain and she's in pain. And the fact that this prize of Velaris is hurting not just Moore, but Feyre as well, it only sweetens the deal. It was never about Velaris. It was about hurting Moore. Rhys literally could not warn her about this because then Moore would have been able to prepare and really block out her own pain and not be so out in the open. Remember, what did Keir just do? He tried to barter Feyre as a sexual object. So, of course, Rhys has to continue negotiations with the only currency that Keir will speak, women.
And that's why Rhys does not tell Moore or Feyre about anything that he has plans for in the Court of Nightmares.
Yeah.
And I love Rhys. I do, but wow, how shitty. And I know he's speaking Keir's language because out of desperation, honestly, he needs that Darkbringer Legion.
Yep.
But wow, how shitty is that?
I mean, Amren will say it best at the end of like that what he does is like just done poorly. But like at one point, Keir looks over at Moore, sees her freaking out and is like, yes.
Yeah, that's exactly what he wanted.
Rhys 100% knew that.
Yeah.
And then to see his high lady and his, his mate Feyre like freaking out also. And then Eris is in here all distressed. Like Keir gets to walk away feeling really good about life.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah. This whole like, oh, you get to come to Velaris. If Moore was super chill about it and had her poker face, never would have sold it.
No, absolutely not.
It's a shitty thing to do. Brilliant strategy.
Right. And that's why he's High Lord of the Night Court.
Yeah. That's one of those, like, it's a crappy situation to be in. And also when people are like, Rhys and Silver Flames is nothing like in Rhys of Wings and Ruin and every, Mist and Fury. It's like, no, that's him.
And I think that does explain his self-sacrificing nature because where he can sacrifice himself, he will.
Yeah.
Because he knows he has to sacrifice the people around him.
Completely. And I'm sure he hated this.
Yeah.
I don't think this is him in the corner being like twirling his mustache saying yes.
Right.
But it's definitely like he had to hurt his best friend, his cousin. He had to hurt his mate. And he is so self-sacrificing that if he couldn't have figured out another way and that this is the only option, it doesn't feel good.
No, it doesn't. I'm sure he would rather kill himself than hurt the people around him.
Yeah. And we know that because he does at the end.
Right. But killing himself wasn't the option.
No, it's not. So, yeah, it's a shitty situation to be in. Good thing we're not.
We don't live in the Court of Nightmares.
Or in charge of it.
Or in Prythian at all.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Eris for a moment and power dynamics in this room. Eris enters and immediately pours himself a glass of wine. I failed to point out earlier that when Feyre and Rhys enter the council chamber, they are the only ones drinking wine. But now that Eris is here, he's the one exerting his power. He's the one drinking the wine. And when you think about it, he's the one with all the power given the situation. No matter how the events in this scene turn out, whether Keir gets what he wants or Rhys gets what he wants, Eris benefits. And because of that, Eris is just guzzling wine like a lush while everyone else is in the room making eyes at each other, and not the sexy kind. And though I'm jumping ahead, when Keir finally does leave the room, knowing he's won this round, quote, the heir of autumn just sipped his wine like the smug bastard that he is.
Except, I will say, Amy, that you and I would love being Eris in this moment. Sitting in the corner watching all the drama go down and somehow still come out on top with wine.
With wine, with all the wine I want? Absolutely.
Yeah. Just sitting here and be like, am I drinking wine or am I drinking tea?
Am I drinking both? I also want to point out that Eris lets slip that Keir and Eris had a bargain that fell apart. I wonder, does this mean more was promised on a bargain between the two? There's so much we don't know, and it's so aggravating. But if this is true, I don't blame Mor for being upset every time she sees Eris, regardless of what happened between the two, because I honestly don't believe Eris harmed Mor.
I thought we already knew that Eris and Keir made a deal.
We knew that they made a deal. I always differentiate between deals and bargains because in the Night Court, bargains result in a tattoo and they're very, very permanent.
Yeah.
As we saw with Rhys and Feyre's bargain under the mountain.
And the term used was bargain.
Bargain. Yeah. This is the first time we're seeing the word bargain involved related to Keir, Eris, and Mor. So it makes me think that there's more going on than we understand.
If there was a hypothetical bargain made and Eris was the one who backed out, then he was one who'd have paid the price.
Right. And that's probably a really big price.
Yeah. Yeah. Bargains aren't things you just back out of. I mean, we're coming up with a lot of hypotheticals here, but it'd be interesting if that was the case and how much he was willing to sacrifice for Mor's happiness.
Right. I mean, and I'm going to bring it up again later. Eris explicitly tells Mor, you don't understand the cost.
Because it was a bargain.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
So I think there's so much more to Eris's bargain with Keir than we understand.
Interesting.
And I cannot wait to find out what it is.
Oh my God. So excited.
Regardless of what happened, Mor, quote, snatched her hand back from Azriel as if she'd been burned as he had been burned when he tries to comfort her.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know that Mor is hurt. She feels betrayed because she likely deduced correctly that Daddy Azzy is in on this and Eris's presence. But let us not forget, Mor's already hurt Daddy Azzy once within the last 48 hours or less. Now she's going to give him one of the greatest insults I can think of, that he did to her what his brothers did to him, the whole burning of the hand.
Oh, yeah.
Don't you dare hurt my Daddy Azzy that way.
Don't hurt him that way. She really did go hard on him.
She went really hard on him.
And you're right, because it was at the dinner when Rhys revealed, okay, guys, we're going to the Court of Nightmares to ask Keir for everything. She looked at Azriel as if, like, you betrayed me. You sided with logic. How dare you?
Right. And she wouldn't talk to him.
Yeah. It's happening again.
Yeah.
Rude.
So rude.
Just don't take it out on others.
Right. No wonder why Azriel goes on to pay attention to Elaine.
Yeah. I want to talk about a moment when Eris reveals that his brother's memories disappeared and how he has trained to fight against Amadi. It's never directly said, but Feyre realizes that Rhys is the one who went to the Autumn Court and risked taking away the brother's memories. All of this was after Feyre was back home, which means Rhys lied to her at some point about where he was and the fact that he put himself in danger again. But we never come back to this. Rhys continues to demonstrate risky behavior, and we talked about how he behaved while Feyre was away and went missing. So of course when Rhys gets Feyre back and is all freaked out because of her having just been in danger and almost dying, Rhys demonstrates destructive behavior all in the name of protection. This reminds me of a Taylor Swift lyric. You'll have to go with me on this one, but it's one of my all-time favorite Taylor Swift lyrics. Quote, so casually cruel in the name of being honest. And it's the same kind of sentiment where Rhys is being reckless, but in the name of being protective, in the name of doing what's right.
Right. In the name of doing what's best for his mate so that Baron doesn't come after her. Why couldn't he tell her?
Yeah. Hey, I need to go do this. And it makes sense. Like, he should go do that.
Right. But tell her you're gonna go do it.
Yeah. I mean, at one point, that means he, 100% just sneaked out. Like, where are you off to? I'm going to go to the library. I'm going to go do this. see you at dinner, honey. And then he just goes and sneaks off and does that.
Yeah, in my mind, he did it in the middle of the night while they were sleeping.
I was imagining that too just now. I feel more betrayed.
I do too.
You abandoned the bed we share.
And then just slipped right in as if you never left.
As if, what if she had a nightmare while he was gone?
Cruel.
Cruel.
Towards the end of the conversation with Kier, Feyre gives a lot away when she asks for the Ouroboros without context and without knowing what it is. I'm sorry, wouldn't it have been smarter for Feyre to have consulted more first?
There's no logic.
There is absolutely no logic. Again, with the whole don't tell anybody anything.
Yeah, but it's also not like Moore wouldn't have found out.
Right. You're asking this question in front of Moore.
Yeah. Saying, hey, tell me more about this Ouroboros. It's not like Moore would be like, you what? Like, I mean, at the end, Moore seems confused about why she even wants it.
Right. Which is giving even more away.
Mm-hmm.
Kier's surprised, but also sees Moore's surprise.
Right?
So he now knows
that it's something they want and they're trying to use it for something.
And not everybody in the inner circle knows what that's about.
Yep.
Which, not cool.
No, you guys aren't coming in as a united front.
Nope. You're messy. Like I said, Feyre is giving so much away in this moment. And we know this is the case when we see that Kier is smirking like a cat with a canary in its mouth. That was a quote. Ironically, Feyre was the cat with canaries or birds that she caught earlier in the Court of Nightmares. Mm-hmm. So now their places have swapped.
Yep. Question, why haven't we taken Moore to the prison? If her power is truth, then shouldn't she be checking in to see that what the bone carver is saying is true?
It's a great question. I wonder if Moore's ever been to the prison.
I think they allude that everyone's been there once, but they haven't said anything specifically as to like, Moore can't go because of X, Y, and Z.
Right. Kier eventually leaves, and once he's gone, we learn that Rhys wiped the minds of the Autumn Court males, as Jac alluded to, but did not succeed with Eris. And I want to know when that took place, because it feels very, very convenient as a story device right now. Again, it could have been at night, but we never go back to it. As Jac said, it's just very frustrating. What does come of this discussion is that Moore understands the politics in this game and is able to rally herself to talk to Eris, which, I will give it to her, I admire. What I don't understand are these tidbits. First of all, Moore asks Eris if he's looking for a bride to torture. Eris says to Moore, quote, I don't know who fed you those lies to begin with, Morrigan. There were forces at work that you have never considered. Remember, Moore's power is truth. So she should know when there are lies being told, right? So she's either spinning her own lies or accepting lies that are being told to her because she doesn't want to learn or lean into the alternative.
So it's alluded that whatever the truth is would devastate Moore, right? Like it would rock her world. So Eris is protecting her from something like that, right? That would be so devastating. And I'm just going to add more fuel to the flames of like theories out there. But if the truth would be so painful, I'm going to say that maybe Rhys or Rhys's father, who we know really liked Moore, might have betrayed her in some form or another.
I wonder.
Because what's the thing that's so... You don't know more if you knew. And then I don't think it's Rhys, but like the whole thing of like people are feeding you lies.
Right.
Which means someone knows the truth.
Yeah.
And Rhys knows everything. But if he didn't, and we already know, they make it very clear that Rhys's father does like Moore or did like Moore. But he was also kind of like a heartless bastard.
Right.
I could see maybe something along those lines that the father betrayed her and Rhys might have known.
Yeah, I could see that. Good point.
Thank you.
Regardless of your good points, it is very frustrating
Yeah.
that we feel like we might begin to glean some understanding, but absolutely have nothing to go on.
Nothing.
And it really gives me a headache. But I do like your theory. Eris is a very fascinating character to me, in all honesty, and I actually really like him.
Oh, I really like him. I'm ignoring the part where he beat up Feyre in a very women-bashing bad way.
Right.
But I do like him.
I know. If we forget that happened and focus on what he does in Wings and Ruin and
Silver Flames,
I like him.
Big fan.
I think what endears him to me is that we learn he actually saved Lucian's life instead of hunting down Lucian's girlfriend like Feyre assumes. So let's run through the details. Eris denied his father Baron when he was commanded to kill Jesminda. Eris was punished for this, and from the sounds of it, he was also locked up.
He said that it was the only time he's gone against his father, too.
Yeah, which is a big deal.
Yeah.
Eris got free of this, told Tamlin to go to the border to meet Lucien, and effectively set the scene for 2 of his brothers to die. This is just an example to me of how quick Feyre is to judge people, especially when she gets told only one side of the story. It's lost on Feyre that maybe Eris is no different from Rhys and is forced to wear a mask. It just so happens that Eris wasn't as, quote, lucky in the friends and family he ended up with as Rhys was. I honestly think we don't see enough of Eris this novel and really hope we get to see more of him in the future, obviously past Silver Flames.
During one of our lives, one of our listeners was saying that they believe Eris knows that Lucien isn't his dad's son.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to agree with that.
I agree. I mean, he's the oldest son. Lucien's the youngest son. So he was he was maybe at least 14. Oh, I'm thinking in human years.
Yeah.
He was probably an adult.
He was grown.
He was very grown by the time Lucien was born. Eris isn't stupid.
No.
He probably knew his mom was having an affair.
Maybe even helped her with it.
Maybe wanted her to be happy.
Yeah, find something to make her happy.
Exactly. So maybe Lucien is the prized child and Eris is very protective of him.
Yeah.
Because it would destroy his mother.
It would. And I really do like Eris, mainly because in such a short amount of time, we see a man who has so much regret and he shows it. I think if anyone gave him an emotional inch, he would show an emotional mile. Then again, this is a projection on how a fictional male would act. Don't trust me, trust your therapist.
Your therapist would say fictional men aren't real.
My therapist, my psychiatrist, I'll ask whoever answers I want.
That fanfiction Draco Malfoy, he's real.
Damn right.
The mystery of this entire chapter doesn't end there, though. It's clear as day to me from this whole chapter that Eris knows Mor's secret when Asriel threatens Eris for talking to Mor. Quote, Eris looked between them, smiling faintly, secretly, as if he knew something that Asriel didn't. I knew why you did it, which is sleep with Cassian. So I gave you your freedom, ending the betrothal in no uncertain terms. And Mor shrinks when Eris gives her his secret smile. She is terrified he will spill the beans. What I want to know is, why does Eris keep Mor's sexuality a secret? What did he do that he regrets and cost him something? Tell me, Sarah J. Maas, just tell me.
I'm going to just keep making up shit at this point. What if Mor was hooking up with Rhys's sister and that's why the dad set her up?
Oh!
Just tell me, Sarah, literally anything. You know, people think that Rhys's sister was Asriel's mate.
Yes, I've heard that.
Yeah. In my theory as to why Rhys, if Rhys or his father, I'm going to say the father, betrays Mor one way or another, what would be so intense that would make him want to do that to her?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe she was with the sister.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I have nothing to prove this with.
You're just adding to the cannon fodder of theories out there because fans are dying for something.
Because Sarah won't give us anything.
I really do like your theory, though. I'm on board for this.
Now I'm going to look for different clues for this.
At the start of chapter 27, the crew returns to Velaris, which feels, quote, infinitely more fragile. There are a lot of reasons for this fragility, and not just because Kier wants to allow members of the Court of Nightmares to roam around the City of Starlight. Feyre realizes no one in the inner circle can risk gazing into the Ouroboros. They cannot risk one of them being broken given the state of the war. That means Feyre cannot bargain with the Bone Carver, which puts them at risk of losing the war and losing Rhys. I also want to point out, this also means Feyre thinks that she cannot lose herself because she is valuable to the war effort, which totally contradicts this belief, in air quotes, that she has nothing to offer.
Yeah. And I've never really, at least in this book, I don't see Feyre thinking she doesn't have anything to offer.
No, but she blatantly says that to Cassian earlier in Wings and Ruin, but she does nothing. None of her actions show that belief. It's almost false modesty.
I'm wondering, because remember when we were talking about that, where she was referencing, I think, her time at Hybern? Because the question I had was, is that what she's saying about herself in general, or is that what she was saying in that moment? Because they were talking within the context of Hybern.
Yeah.
And in the context of Hybern, Yeah, I mean, she's not wrong. None of them had anything to offer in that moment. Right. She had to, like, sacrifice herself. It made sense.
And she was particularly mad that she got fooled by the Book of Breathings and the cauldron.
Yeah. But kind of like what we were saying is, like, nothing here has showed that she feels that she's not valuable. I don't doubt that she feels like she's not as strong as everyone, but her actions contradict, for sure.
I agree.
Fall has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because you know I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. Like, my entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk.
Move your career further, faster in just 2 days with a Harvard Professional and Executive Development Program. Advance your leadership skills, craft smarter business strategies, build your network, and transform how you work and think to keep your career moving forward. You'll earn a certificate and can add Harvard to your resume with Harvard Professional and Executive Development. Learn more at professional.dce.harvard.edu/Spotify.
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Some of the fragility that Feyre is sensing is also because there are fissures within the inner circle. While at the Court of Nightmares, Feyre, quote, could almost hear it. The crack I knew was about to sound amongst our own circle when Eris walked into the room.
This is great, and I'm going to go back a little bit because when they first enter the room is described as having been split as if a lightning bolt had struck it. And that was before all this shit went down. Chef's kiss.
It's such a great little detail that was foreshadowing what was about to happen.
Yeah, it's like this entire room is split up. Something's been struck. Things are falling and breaking apart.
AKA the people.
Yeah, the people.
This same language is used in chapter 27 when Moore turns to Rhys, quote, something in my chest cracked, too, at the tears that began running down Moore's face. You know where else this language was used? When Feyre's mastermind schemes began to tear the spring court apart. Feyre and her mate are really, really good at destroying things.
This is such a good freaking callback, Amy, to the point where I want to read what you're referencing. It was after Feyre set up Ianthe and the soldier to take the fall for leaving the gates unlocked and the Naga to invade, and the soldier gets whipped. Quote, the thunderous crack as it cleaved the air, snapping through the barracks, the estate, throughout the very foundations of the court.
It's so good and subtle, and I love it.
It's such a callback to it, because like even the room, it's like a lightning bolt, lightning and thunder, It just, It's a total reference to that.
It's a parallel that we're seeing when you really think about it. Feyre's time in the spring court is being mirrored here amongst the inner circle by both Feyre and Rhys. They're both at fault for what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
They're terrible leaders.
Yeah. They're terrible leaders, but they're also, I mean, Rhys isn't doing anything.
Let me rephrase.
He's terrible and he's great.
Right. Let me rephrase. It's as Amren describes. As a leader, they're doing great strategically. As friends, they're doing a piss poor job.
Horrible.
The issue comes down to communication, as our High Lord is wont to have a hard time doing. But things get ugly when Amarantha's name gets thrown around, and you know things are going to shit when they're all willing to discuss the one thing, quote, they had never come this close to discussing, what had happened to Rhys.
Mor throws in Amarantha's name, and she says that Rhys wouldn't work with her. And Rhys says, quote, I would not give a shit that she made me fuck her for all those years. If she said she could buy us a chance at defeating Hybern, at keeping all of you alive, I would thank the fucking cauldron. It's in all italics, and that's how I imagine he says it.
Oh, absolutely.
What I want to examine is Mor's response. It's not, that's not true, or you're lying. What she says is, quote, you don't mean that. And that phrasing stuck out to me because that is more reminiscent of someone who is responding to something hurtful that's directed at them. Example, all of the romance books I've read, there's a handful of guys who try to break up with the heroine and do it for her own good. And they'll say, I don't care about you. I never did. And the response is always like, you don't mean that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Love it all. Love all my smutty books. Mor is taking Rhys's hypothetical sacrifice very much to heart. And I think part of that is because she's having her selfishness thrown in her face. Note, please note, it's not selfishness that she doesn't want to work with her abusers. She has every right to not want to work with them. The selfishness is trying to use someone else's trauma against them for her own means. And the shitty part is that Rhys already proved that he would let Amarantha back. I know Rhys later goes on and say that he would kill Amarantha on the spot, but I'm going to say that we have evidence to the contrary. Remember Feyre's dream a few episodes back? In that dream, she saw Rhys go with Amarantha willingly, as if Feyre knew that he would sacrifice himself the exact same way again if it meant that he could help those he loved. Mor isn't shining too great here for me.
No, she, again, like Feyre sometimes, struggles with logic. She's ruled entirely by emotion.
Yeah.
And so she is going to say the most hurtful thing possible because she's hurting right now.
Yeah.
And that's the only reason why she throws around Amarantha's name, is because Rhys hurt me. I am hurting right now. Mm-hmm. Therefore, I feel like I have the right to throw something hurtful back at him.
And again, like, you know, you don't have to want to work with your abusers. She doesn't have to want to.
Absolutely not.
This is a shitty situation where, you know, you're in a matter of politics and you have to. But she's absolutely right to be frustrated and angry and pissed off. It's using the fact that Rhys is a survivor after 50 years of assault and using that against him.
Right.
Is so shitty. And Mor, damn it.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about this at the end, but when you really think about what are the dynamics between Mor and Rhys after this,
yeah,
there's not a lot of reasons for them to make up.
Rhys doesn't feel anger towards Mor about what she says here. And it's kind of like, okay, look, just because you're not angry doesn't mean that what happened wasn't good.
Right. Exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, what's happening is Rhys is able to remove himself as an individual and his experiences from what's going on around him. He is able to approach what's happening with, I have to pick the lesser of two evils to make sure we all stay alive.
I'm going to look at it slightly different. I think in this moment, it's not him separating himself. It's him feeding this aspect. Like, he gets more reasons to hate himself. I don't think that this is him being like, logically, I'm separating myself. This is what I have to do. I think Mor hit a sore spot, obviously, for him. And he's kind of like, yes, more reason for me to hate myself. More reason for
me to sacrifice myself because I'm not good enough.
Yeah, exactly. Like, he's not saying, oh, I don't care about this because it doesn't affect him. I think he's saying, yes, this is why I'm worthless.
It's a good point. You have convinced me.
Thank you.
I love Amren. I always have, but I love her even more because in this scene, she calls Rhys out for his shit when he claims he would ally with Amarantha if she could save his family from Hybern. Quote, you're a sneaky bastard. You always have been and likely always will be. But it doesn't excuse you, boy, from not warning us. Warning her, not where those two monsters are involved. Yes, you made the right call, played it well, but you also played it badly. Who knew Amren could be such a good mother hen?
Right? I love her, and there's not enough Amren love on TikTok.
I agree.
We need more of that, please.
Yep.
And more fan art.
I agree.
I want to see some sexy Amren fan art.
Ooh.
I love the start of her speech. Quote, I've kept this unit from breaking for 49 years. I wonder how many fights amongst themselves she must have broken up all those years that Rhys was gone.
Oh, yeah. And she probably had to save all of them from like self-destruction.
Oh, yeah.
Because they all blamed themselves for Rhys going off.
I'm sure everyone had their drunken moment.
Oh, yeah.
In the alley. I'm imagining Cassian just like in a stupor and then her coming up to them and be like, boy,
get up.
Pull yourself together. You think that he's sacrificing himself for you to act like this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's my Amren voice.
It's a good Amren voice.
Can you read her quote in your Amren voice? That I've kept this unit from.
Okay. Let me try.
I won't look at you.
I've kept this unit from breaking for 49 years.
It's good. It's good. You have a good Amren voice.
Thanks.
I approve.
In all the calamity going around the inner circle, Feyre says to Rhys down the bond, quote, I see you, and it does not frighten me. This is not the only time Feyre will say this to Rhys. It's an interesting parallel to the Ouroboros and what Feyre will have to do to see all of herself and to accept herself. And what I mean by that is that in some ways, Feyre is Rhys's Ouroboros.
Oh my God. She is. Wow.
She's trying to reflect to Rhys his true self and that his true self is not scary.
Except when he looks at her, all he sees is that his true self is scary.
Exactly.
Because he's not wrong.
He's not wrong. I bet he couldn't survive the Ouroboros.
Ooh, I agree with that. I have no doubt that Rhys has done so many shitty things in his life for the sake of the greater good, but it would be really hard to look at that and look at it from within. Ooh.
What I like about this parallel of Feyre being Rhys's Ouroboros is that Feyre and Rhys are alike in many ways, and in saying Feyre sees Rhys and accepts him, you would think that Feyre should also inherently accept herself. But that's not the case. Rhys, as we've discussed, theoretically sees all of Feyre and accepts all of her, but does not necessarily always accept himself. And I say this because of his willingness to sacrifice himself and the fact that he continues to not deem himself worthy or enough. What we're seeing right now is the, quote, howling void, a raging dark tempest that can be Rhys's inner monster. I'm going to be interested to see if Feyre's inner monster is similar.
It's funny because the fact that Feyre tells Rhys that he doesn't frighten her, it was always weird to me. It's a weird phrasing. Wouldn't it be easier to just say, I love you, I accept you, I know you in your heart? But you're absolutely right. This is foreshadowing for the Ouroboros and Feyre being able to see herself and not frighten herself.
And I think it's significant that she's able to say she sees all of Rhys and accepts him.
Yeah.
Because
that means she has to accept herself.
Right. Because I would say Rhys has probably done worse things than Feyre at this point.
Completely.
So the fact that she's capable of accepting Rhys and all of what he's done means, accepting herself will be a walk in the park.
Oh, completely. Like, we're not saying Rhys is a bad guy, but he's had to make really hard calls that sacrificed a lot of people. Yep. Just thinking about his time under the mountain and the children who from the Winter Court who all got massacred and trying to figure out who lives and who survives and how he can sacrifice people and making all those calls while trying to keep everyone alive and keep his court safe. It's a hard line to follow, and there's no right or wrong, but no matter what, you're going to hurt someone. To me, there's no world where Feyre catches up to Rhys of the shitty things that he's done.
Right. And one difference I will say between Feyre and Rhys definitely internalizes all his bad choices in the sense that, like, he really stews in them.
Yeah.
Feyre doesn't.
No, she doesn't. She doesn't. The closest she stewed was, like, killing those Fae.
Yeah, that was about it.
Yeah. And again, like, this, when we say, like, he's done shitty things, it's like, we're also saying, yes, he had to do it. The same way that Feyre had to kill those 3 Fae.
Exactly.
Or 2, really. But it's also, like, it sucks. It was not a fun thing to do. But, you know, Feyre stewed for a solid
3 months.
3 months. And now she's always like, I want to feast on your blood.
When the topic of the Ouroboros comes up, Amren quickly picks up on the fact that she's out of the loop. Feyre hesitates being honest about it when Rhys reveals the trip to the prison. Why does Feyre hesitate? It's because Lucian's present. After all he's overheard, I don't know if I understand Feyre's hesitation. But nonetheless, it happens, and Lucian excuses himself from the room, exhibiting, quote, frustration and perhaps disappointment. I blocked it out, what it did to my stomach.
Why does Lucian have to leave? Answer me, Amy. Why? It does not make sense at all. He's been a part of so much. He's heard so much. Also, wouldn't Lucian's magical eye be a great option to look into the Ouroboros since his special eye can see through glamour? I'm not saying that we should sacrifice Lucian and have him try it, but he's a valuable player.
Yeah. And in theory, he is.
And talk about a class act. He excused himself.
He did.
He picked that up, sensed what was going on, and he was like, you know what?
It's not worth the fight.
So I'm gonna leave with grace and dignity.
Which makes it even more frustrating to me because not trusting Lucian is physically affecting Feyre. And I would argue it's making her weaker, choosing not to trust him, as seen by the reoccurrence of her nausea. Yet Feyre can't process that maybe she needs to trust Lucian, and so she ignores it. Lucian's rightly frustrated. The disappointment, though, that is the feeling one has for someone they care about. Remember what we said earlier this season. Feyre is Lucian's only family, and now that he's moved into the townhouse, a place symbolic of trust, I can imagine him thinking, wow, she's finally trusting me. Wow, we're finally, getting closer.
Yeah.
Yet somehow she continues to oust him. So I don't blame him for being frustrated and disappointed.
This is the court that he said he always thought Tamlin's court would have been like.
Right.
And it's like, oh, I can maybe be a part of a group. Maybe I can have friends. Maybe, okay, fine, fuck you. I'll go upstairs.
Right. Maybe I could be happy here. Maybe I could have the life I always wanted.
On one level, I get it. He's still new, so you can't trust him with everything.
Right.
But he's heard so much.
Right. So much. This seems like the stupid thing to, not include him with.
It's not like you can even use it yet.
Yep. Also, can I just say, completely off topic, Daddy Azzy secretly at the ready to take a stab at Amren is fucking hot.
Oh, yeah. Cold-blooded of...
Oh, so cold-blooded, but I understand it.
Yes. It's one of those moments where I'm like, can we just appreciate how savage that is? Where it's like, here's his friend. Yeah, he doesn't trust her. Still his friend that he's been around with for hundreds of years, ready to stab her at any given moment.
Yep. Savage.
Yeah.
I understand it, though.
Yeah, no, I do too. Wait, is this you saying that you'd stab me if I was Amren?
If you were a threat to the people I love?
I am the people you love.
But I'm not saying I would stab you. But think about it. Rhys.
I'd tackle you. I wouldn't stab you. That's the answer, Amy. That's the answer.
I would stun you.
Thank you. God, what does a friend have to do to say you wouldn't kill me? Before we go into Amren's reveal, I just want to point out that Cassian tells Nesta to come to him with just the tilt of his head, and she listens, much to Feyre's shock. Then Nesta has to go on her tiptoes to look over Cassian's shoulder to see what's going on. And I don't know why, but that whole thing is, obviously it's freaking cute and sweet, but it's also hot. What is wrong with me?
I agree, though. I love that moment so much because they're able to communicate without communicating.
Yeah.
She trusts him to protect her. And I just imagine her eyes and a little bit of her nose peeking up over his shoulder and bobbing because she can't stay up the whole time.
How tall is she then? Because he's 6'5" or something.
I always imagined her being the tallest of her sisters.
Okay, but if he's 6'5".
So to see over his shoulder has to be 5'10", 5'11".
My ex was 6'3". I'm 5'8". I could not look over his shoulder.
Even if you were on your tiptoes?
Maybe.
I think you could if you were on your tiptoes.
I can call him and find out.
Practice on Randall.
Oh, yeah.
Randall.
Roommate.
So the real meat of this scene is that Rhys demands Amren reveal her secret of how she escaped the prison so that they can achieve the same with the bone carver. Amren eventually relents, displaying a parallel trait I think is vital for us to discuss. Quote, I had to give up something. I had to give me up. To walk out, I had to become something else entirely, something the prison would not recognize. So I I bound myself into this body. I yielded my grace, my perfect immortality. I gave up everything I was.
Ooh, snaps for Amy.
Thanks. For selfish reasons, Amren sacrificed herself. Yet somehow that still feels selfless because in the process, she undid herself. This isn't unlike Feyre when you think about it. Both died and were remade for the sake of freedom.
I think the selfless version of it is the sacrificing of what is described as almost perfect, being from grace, accepting that she, Amren, would be born anew to a weaker mortal, aka Fae, body. Feyre didn't choose it, and she resented it. It's two views of the same path.
I think that's a good point. Even though there are parallels in what happened, there's vast differences in the reactions to those things.
Yeah, which I think you can see it even to this day where Amren's a little bit more settled in herself. Granted, she's been around for hundreds, thousands of years, but she made that call.
She did. This point about Amren is so important when you think about the end of Wings and Ruin and why Amren does what she does. And I feel like SJM is foreshadowing what Amren will do when directly after this conversation, Rhys asks Amren if she can be unbound and what would happen if that was achieved. Chef's kiss. I also want to note that when Rhys states that Amren told him that someone else bound her, Amren admits, quote, I lied to cover what I'd done so no one could know. In a lot of ways, Amren is just like Rhys.
Oh, yeah.
Another thing that I love is that during her monologue, Amren admits she did what she did because, quote, I had not felt the wind on my face, had not smelled the rain. I could not even remember what they felt like. I did not remember sunlight. And then she looks at Daddy Azzy. Quote, the Shadow Singer's darkness pulled away to reveal eyes full of understanding. This is so significant when you remember that Azriel has never trusted Amren. He showed that because he was about to stab her.
Yeah.
He also has Nuala and Caradwyn always report on Amren's movements. Yet, in this moment, Azriel can feel empathy for Amren. And I love it so much because it feels like the final piece of the Inner Circle puzzle has been filled in when this scene could have been more about destruction of the Circle.
Just want to ask, so darkness pulled away to reveal his eyes. Was he like in a shadow helmet?
Like an Iron Man helmet?
Yeah, like he's like ready to fight. And he's like, so it's a nice, bright, sunny day. Everyone, they're in the foyer. And he's just like off to the corner, all shadowy, like covered in shadows. And then all of a sudden, he's like, you relate to me?
Reveal to the sun?
What? You see me, friend.
That's hilarious.
So what I would like to ask is, does Azriel pull his shadows away from watching Amren after this? Probably not, but I like to imagine that his shadows watch her a little bit less.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to stop getting reports on Amren, but maybe it's like, don't watch her while she goes to the bathroom.
Like he was watching her for even then. Look, guys, we can stop watching her in the shower now. This is called growth. This is called trust.
At this point, Elaine stumbles upon the group and speaks of her visions, though no one realizes what's going on except perhaps Azriel. He's the only one who takes her seriously, encouraging her to speak instead of letting her shrink away. Feyre, on the other hand, in the vein of being a bad sister, offers, quote, let me get you some hot milk, essentially treating Elaine like a child in the process.
Hot milk doesn't even sound good.
Nope. No.
Hot chocolate would be lovely.
It would be. Elaine is put off by Feyre and begins to walk back up the stairs. I love the imagery. The stairs are symbolic of Elaine retreating into herself, isolating herself from the others around her because they don't understand her. Elaine only stops climbing the stairs when Azriel asks Elaine what she saw. And every Elriel lover swoons when Daddy Azzy's, quote, hazel eyes churned as he studied Elaine, her tooth and body, and without a word, he winnowed away. Okay, Daddy, but dark and mysterious and find out all the answers with your torturous ways? I love it.
Are you going to love it with the point I point out later?
No, because you do make a good point. The last sentence of this scene strikes me as curious. Quote, Moore watched the space where Azriel had been standing long after he was gone. What is this? What is going on through Moore's head?
It's so hard for me not to think poorly of Mor, but Mor very clearly thinks she has a claim on Azriel. Just a recap, she expects Azriel to side with her on political matters because of his attachment to her. She wants him to put her needs and consideration above the Night Court. So keep all of that in mind. I wonder how much of it is shock that he left the place first, as if Mor expected him to stay and talk to her, at least try to, and Mor walking away first. I know this is speculation and not in Mor's favor, but I think historically she hasn't been kind to Azriel, as we saw earlier when she pulled away from him, especially the fact that she knows that he loves her. That's part of the reason why I don't like Mor, is how much she strings Daddy Azzy along.
I agree. Mor is not endearing herself to us right now.
No. There's nothing about Mor in this section, in this episode that we're covering, that's like, for me to understand her better.
Yeah.
In a positive way.
Right. I have empathy for her having been abused.
Yes.
I don't have empathy for the way she lashes out at everybody around her.
Absolutely. She's going through a lot. I get it. I respect it. But that doesn't mean that you get to hurt others around you.
Right. What she needs is therapy, because all she does in response to her trauma is drink and dance.
Yeah.
And lash out at people.
Yes. This is me pointing at you aggressively, saying you are right.
She needs therapy.
But I didn't even realize like the drinking and the dancing is her coping skills.
Yep.
Which, not all that different from Nesta later on. Sorry, spoiler there.
Yeah.
For anyone.
Spoiler. But Mor doesn't get shit the way Nesta does from the inner circle.
Yeah.
She doesn't get locked up.
No, because she like holds it together. But her behavior, again, Silver Flame spoiler, her behavior isn't all that different from Nesta.
Not at all.
Granted, Nesta's more of a drunk and won't get up, and Mor is like functioning where she's able to help with other stuff. But like to your point, Nesta gets so much shit from everyone else.
Yeah, Mor is no different.
Everyone has their trauma.
Yeah, and Mor's had 500 years to work on her trauma.
Yeah, like everyone has trauma. You can respect that, but that doesn't give allowance to hurt others.
No, not at all.
There's an awesome sister bonding moment between Nesta and Feyre, and I'm going to say it's because they are still in their Court of Nightmares clothes. They are fresh from a situation where there was mutual respect for one another. Quote, "My stomach dropped to the floor. One glance at Nesta confirmed that she felt it too. Saw it." That was when they were looking at Elaine when she was walking back up the stairs. They're on the same team here, and they have a very real conversation about this.
So what's that conversation? As the majority of the group depart, Feyre tries to get information out of Nesta about what happened at the Court of Nightmares after she and Amryn disappeared. Nesta's defensive, and when Feyre tries to be positive, Nesta lashes out saying, quote, "I failed every time, so no, it did not go right."
Nesta admits that she failed to Feyre, and that must have been a very hard pill to swallow, especially after seeing how strong and skilled Feyre was at hurting the other people in the Court of Nightmares. Question. By not addressing Nesta's failures, by changing the subject to Elaine, did Feyre do the right thing? By changing the subject, did Feyre adapt to Nesta and Nesta's needs, or did Feyre just avoid another potential opportunity of connection?
I feel like Feyre is just avoiding another opportunity for connection, and I don't think that's intentional. I think Feyre was trying to connect, misinterpreted what Nesta needed. Nesta did not clearly communicate what she needed, and instead of trying again, Feyre backs away and tries to focus on the thing that does connect them, which is Elaine. And it's a pattern that they share, that they don't know how to interact with each other. And so instead of trying to break through that barrier, they avoid it. It's a really sad pattern because just a little bit more conversation could have brought clarity.
Yeah.
And it doesn't. They don't do the work.
No. I mean, I don't think they're in a place to be able to say this specifically, but one thing that I'm seeing it to be more common and popular is when someone comes to you with a problem, to stop and ask, do you want a solution or do you want to vent?
Yeah. Do you want comfort or do you want to solve the problem?
Yeah. And if you're coming to me for venting, like if you want me to say, screw them, they're an asshole, I will do that with you. Or do you want solutions to this?
Yeah.
Because that's like a very, and again, I don't think they're in that place where they can.
No.
But that would be such a moment where it's like, I failed every time. And it's like, okay, do you want suggestions or do you want to just vent and be like, fuck all this?
Right. And do you want me to comfort you or do you want me to just listen?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not mature enough for
But that would require, even if Feyre was mature enough to do that, Nesta's not mature enough to be like,
nope.
That's a great question. What do I want? What are my emotional needs at this moment?
Yeah. But I think Nesta would pause and consider the question and try to answer it.
Oh my God, just imagine an emotionally intelligent Feyre approaching a Nesta. In that moment, Nesta would have been, what? I have options? What are you doing?
What do you want from me?
Yeah.
So in this conversation and Nesta talking about herself failing, we know Nesta's talking about practicing sensing the magic at the Court of Nightmares, literally. But I think Nesta's reaction is more than just about that. And I want to suggest it's about Nesta's role as the eldest sister. Think about the scene. Elaine just came across as quote-unquote crazy to the whole group. I hate using that word with women. We've talked about why.
Yep.
Nesta says in response to this whole thing that, quote, everything has a cost. Maybe the cost of Elaine's youth and immortality was losing part of her sanity. And that Nesta's cost, quote, was to see Elaine suffer, while I got away unscathed. Again, I think it's more than just this. Nesta could not protect Elaine from what happened to her, just like Nesta could not protect Feyre from what happened to her. Think about it this way. Nesta is the one who encouraged Feyre to go after Tamlin when Tamlin sent Feyre away. Feyre ultimately lost her human life because of this. She went to Under the Mountain to rescue Tamlin. She died. In kind of a parallel situation, Elaine did not want to leave the human lands when Rhys offered to protect Elaine and Nesta in Mist and Fury. Nesta let Elaine make that choice instead of forcing Elaine to leave and be more protected. This made Elaine and Nesta available to be kidnapped and ultimately led to both of them losing their human lives.
I love this interpretation. I think you're absolutely right. I'm going to provide a slightly different perspective to show how one line can have two thought processes. I read the line as Nesta admitting that she was not unscathed, that the lie is too obvious and it's almost comical. To me, this is almost the closest cry for help I've seen from Nesta. And to Feyre's credit, she tries to go into it, but Nesta tells her not to bother. But I think we can say that Nesta knows that there's something deeply, quote, wrong with her, just like there's something, again, quote, wrong with Elaine.
I love that thought, that it's a cry for help and she's lying just to get out of the situation, but really almost wants Feyre to ask about it.
Yeah.
But she's probably just too tired to, like, even engage.
I just love where I love literature. It's like, oh, here we are taking it two different ways. Yeah. Neither one wrong, neither one right.
That's right.
Both of them, awesome.
No matter what Nesta meant by what she said, I bet just in general, she feels like a shitty older sister right now. And the fact that the magic sensing and testing did not go well at the Court of Nightmares is just the icing on the cake. Just because Nesta seems to have powers, she somehow is still powerless, just as powerless as she was when she was human. Feyre and Nesta are not good at talking about this stuff with each other, maybe because Nesta resents that Feyre is the one who always ends up being the protector. I think this might be why Nesta constantly shoves Feyre away right now, and this causes a rift between the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I do feel bad for Feyre in this moment, because what Nesta doesn't realize is that Feyre feels equally powerless. When she goes to her bedroom, Feyre, quote, crawled onto the mattress and cried. I didn't really know why. And that really hits home for me.
Yeah.
I've definitely done that. I'm just like, I don't know why I'm so sad or crying, but I need to cry right now.
And like everything is sad.
Yeah.
You know, like it really is like everything has gone so tits up. Everything sucks. Everything is sad. None of it was specifically to her.
Right. Or like her fault.
But it's like, yeah, it's a sad moment.
It is a sad moment. My last note for this is that both sisters are so bad at identifying what they're really feeling and why, which we all are at some times. And I really honestly blame their absent parents for that.
It's true. Lucien tells Feyre to have a healer look at Elaine. Why is this the first time someone is suggesting this? Because there is a very, very real answer to me here. I'm going to compare Lucien and Asriel to Rhys and Tamlin. When Feyre was hurting at the start of Mist and Fury, Rhys wanted to address the issue, to talk about the obvious at the fact that she was not okay and needed help. What did Tamlin do? He disappeared and went off without a word or explanation. He went to go look for help for Feyre, and we find that out later, but Tamlin never told Feyre that. So what's going on here? Lucien wants to talk about Elaine, address it, while Asriel went off without a word to go look for answers. Amy, you said before that Lucien and Elaine are like Rhys and Feyre, but a cautionary tale of what were to happen if Feyre had found out about the mating bond before she was ready and was still in love with Tamlin. Well, here's another side to that. Asriel is what would have happened with Tamlin had Tamlin found the answer and helped Feyre in time before Rhys could.
I love how you're using my thoughts and using them against me to prove your point.
I didn't even read your thought because it was in dark blue.
Oh, no. I just meant in general about my love for Asriel and Elaine and my disdain for Lucien and Elaine. But you're right. Mm-hmm. You're so right. Instead of Asriel, which he should have done, been like, I have a thought. I want to go pursue this. I might be able to explain what's happening. Mm-hmm. He just disappears. And in the moment, it was hot, but right now, it's not.
It's very much a like, cool, thanks for that, bro. She just had a moment. I don't want to call it a freak out or like, an episode. Right. We'll call it. And he's like, I'm out.
Peace out.
Yeah. Sure, he wants to go and help. So did Tamlin.
Yeah. You are absolutely right. And I admire you and I hate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for saying that you don't hate me. Just it. Feyre and Rhys comfort one another, and it's a very sweet moment here. They're both shattered by what happened, and they find comfort by opening their minds to one another and letting the other in. Nothing to analyze here. It's just a sweet moment.
It is a sweet moment. Now let me ruin it.
Yeah.
Towards the end of the chapter, when Feyre asks if Rhys would risk looking into the Ouroboros, Rhys tells Feyre, quote, not yet, as he holds her tighter. Sweet. But what is he really saying? Is he saying not yet because he's not willing to make the sacrifice he needs to make just yet? Or is he saying not yet because he's not willing to let Feyre make any more sacrifices and would rather sacrifice himself first?
That one. That's the answer.
Yeah.
That is it. That is absolutely the answer.
Let me sacrifice myself first before you try.
Yeah, like, hold on. I'm not ready to sacrifice myself just yet, but we'll get there. So now we're going to go into breadcrumbs, and this is going to be a special edition of breadcrumbs. So SJM universe spoiler, please skip ahead. In this breadcrumb section, I'm going to talk about one of the big obvious moments that I think we're all thinking of, and that's when Amren talks to everyone about where she comes from. There's so many ways of looking at this, and I would highly recommend looking into Happy Hermit, look into her account, look into her TikTok, look at her podcast. But I'm going to list off some things that we absolutely know to be true. One, SJM at one point did say that Amren was an angel of some kind.
An Old Testament.
Old Testament angel, not the kind that we would normally think of. There's so many different options for that. There's like seraphims, which aren't the archangels that we think of. There's so many different types of angels that we might associate. We know that in Crescent City that there are angels. We know that Amren speaks the same language as Bryce does.
The ancient Fey language that
exactly.
Bryce speaks.
We know that Amren
traveled through an opening in the world to come to Prythian.
And we know that she served an old god, an angry god.
Yes, and basically would destroy worlds for them.
Yeah. These are the things that we know, and it could mean so very, very much. The reason why SJM doesn't kill off Amren is because she is going to be essential when it comes to Crescent City 3, obviously. And there's just so many theories. I know there's going to be a mini episode eventually
about it,
that we talk about it more there. So please find that mini episode.
We don't know which one it is yet.
We don't know if it's going to become before or after this, but look for it.
Our other breadcrumb is in chapter 27. Rhys asks what would happen if Amren were unbound. She claims, quote, I would not remember you. I would not care for any of you. I would either smite you or abandon you. Yet just the previous page, she also said, quote, I did not feel the way you do, the way I do now. Some things, loyalty and wrath and curiosity, but not the full spectrum. I think this is Sarah J. Maas trying to trick us into believing Amren will betray the inner circle when she becomes her true form. Mm-hmm. Yet Amren literally just told us she was a loyal being, and in my mind, she can remain so even unbound.
Oh, completely.
And that's why she chooses to stay.
Yeah. If I was the inner circle and Amren says, I'm looking for that part of the quote, I would not remember you. I would not care for any of you. I'd be the annoying one, be like, oh my God, Aaron, are you saying you care for me now? Aaron, like, wait a minute, I just want to regroup to this. Aaron, you care.
Such a Cassian thing to say.
I am Cassian.
You are.
Let's come back to the question that we asked ourselves at the beginning of the episode. Amy, how have the inner circle's dynamics been permanently altered?
I'm going to say much alteration has occurred.
Yeah.
I think permanent damage has been done between Mor and Rhys, as well as Mor and Azriel.
Yeah.
But I think at the same time, more good has been done for Amren's relationship with the rest of the inner circle. Because her revealing that secret that she's kept hidden from them for hundreds of years, that's emotional vulnerability, even though she says it angrily.
Yeah. Still vulnerable.
It's still vulnerable. And I think there's a lot of respect that is developed for Amren.
Yeah.
And so it is interesting. I'm going to have to pay attention to Mor and Rhys, but I really don't think they are able to come back from this in a way that their relationship looks like what it looks like. I think they are more now High Lord and Commander than they are cousins.
I agree with all of that. I would even say that this impacts Mor's relationship with everyone and starts to separate her from everyone as well.
Yeah.
We know that, like you're saying with Azriel starts to really crush on Elaine. That ends up being more of his attention goes there thing. Even though he gets angry after the High Lords meeting and everything. But again, she pushes him away. She acts out more with that. Later on, we'll discuss how Mor reacts to Feyre when Feyre sneaks away during the war camps and everything. And we know, again, Silver Flame spoiler, that in Silver Flames, we really don't get to see Mor there. She's gone for that book. She's isolating herself. She's pushing herself away from everyone because there's a lot of things that she has to address.
Yeah. And even though Mor does come out to Feyre in this book, something you were saying to me during prep, her anger at Feyre is really fueled by what's happening here and the lies that keep happening and taking place, right? And I think, honestly, Mor coming out to Feyre is her last attempt at connection before isolation. Or at least maybe even her explanation for isolation.
You know, this might be the nicest thing I'm going to say about Mor, but I'm going to say that Mor is the example of humanity amongst all of them.
Yeah.
She's the one, and I know they're all Fae, but like lean with me here. But she's the one who still is like trying to have that, hey guys, we're still people here too.
Yeah.
We're, again, please excuse the whole Fae and humans and everything, but that like, we're friends. We still want to feel connection to one another. Like everyone's doing the logical thing when it comes to war and strategy. But she is that very emotional human element to all of this. The quote unquote human heart, even though she's not human. And I think that's needed. Of course, it keeps everyone sane, but that's also why she ends up doing so poorly.
Yeah, I agree. It's hard because she knows in the long run, if they live, they still have lives to live after this.
Yeah, and she understands that better than anyone else, I think.
Absolutely. And she really mourns what war does to their relationships. We see that earlier in the book. She's trying to prevent that, and instead she gets hurt more.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't think she has enough self-awareness to realize that she's viewing this differently than everyone else.
Yeah.
And that's like, she keeps disappointing herself. Why aren't you choosing life? Why aren't you choosing friendship? Like, this is the thing that holds us together. This is what we're fighting for. And it just hurts her more and more because she's not able to adapt. And again, like, that's needed.
Right.
You need to have someone that's there to remind you of all of this. But this is the moment, I agree, that's going to start severing her and isolating her.
Yeah, which is so ironic when you know that she's the third most powerful among them.
Yeah.
That she is an essential piece of war effort.
Yep.
But she doesn't want to be.
She's the least warrior out of all of them.
Yeah.
Even Feyre.
It's true.
Feyre's ready for blood. Feyre's out here just like, ooh, can't wait to kill more.
Yeah.
People, not more.
True.
Yeah.
And now here's this week's featured review from Apple Podcasts.
All right, this review is a little bit longer, but it comes from Jenny from Great Britain, titled The Perfect Podcast. Oh my God, thank you, Jenny. Amy and Jac are engaging, funny, incredibly insightful.
Well,
Off thanks. To a great start, Jenny, thank you. Each episode is carefully planned and executed in a way which greatly deepens my enjoyment and understanding of the books. It's also a lot of fun to listen to and is never dry or too academic. I love their intelligent analysis and how they strike a balance between personal and intellectual commentary, which makes you notice so much more in the text than before. I went into the podcast liking the books. I came out really respecting the careful crafting of the stories and loving the text in a way I never expected. This is not your average fumbling recap of a book chapter by chapter. The thought and energy put into really digging new insights from the text are evident throughout and somehow make that genuinely warm and funny. The editing is tight. They keep up the pace and there is no filler. Amy and Jac's professionalism is evident throughout each episode, as is their genuine enthusiasm and love for the text. It does everything a literary podcast should. Deepen your understanding, gives you someone to enjoy the text with, and leaves you thinking about what it was said for days after. Highly, highly recommend.
She thinks we're professional.
We fooled them all.
That was my greatest takeaway. No, that was beautiful.
Oh my God.
I've never been so actually proud of a compliment I've received.
Yeah, I think what hits home on that one is I feel seen because we really work hard on this.
We work so hard on this.
It's we both have full-time jobs and this is another full-time job and we love it. Don't get us wrong.
Yeah.
We love doing it. We love being able to share with everyone. But it is a lot of work, and we do try really, really hard to find that balance between professionalism and fun and everything. So that kind of review it hits my soul.
Yeah.
I feel seen. I feel special.
And it's gratifying to know that the way we've chosen to conduct this podcast has really translated well for other people.
Yeah.
Because I fully expected people to be like, this is so unorganized and I can't follow them. And
I mean, if they go back to season 1, that might be
It's true. It's true.
We've grown.
We have grown.
We've grown. But yeah, thank you so much, Jenny.
Thank you. And if you would like to be featured on the podcast, please leave us a 5-star written review on Apple Podcasts.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Book Talk for Book Talk. We encourage you to rate and subscribe to our show on your preferred podcast listening platform. Next week, we'll be exploring chapters 28 through 31 of A Court of Wings and Ruin.
We would love to hear your thoughts based on today's conversation. You can submit your comments to our form at booktalkforbooktalk.com for a chance to have your feedback discussed during a weekly mini episode.
If you're enjoying the podcast, please visit our website, booktalkforbooktalk.com, to view our latest merch and learn about supporting the show through Patreon, Ko-Fi, or Venmo. You can also follow us on TikTok or Instagram at the handle booktalkforbooktalk.
Bye.
Fall has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. My entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk.
Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. At Mint Mobile, we like to do the opposite of what Big Wireless does. They charge you a lot, we charge you a little. So naturally, when they announced they'd be raising their prices due to inflation, we decided to deflate our prices due to not hating you. That's right. We're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.